Okay, you guys, I'm going to start this live out with sharing a skit that ties into the title of this live. And I have Mr. here with me, as you can see from our picture.
What's up, y'all?
So, yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at it. Let me share my screen with you guys. Hi, Jasmine. Hi, Wendell. All right, let me share my screen so we can watch this. Some of you may have seen this and some of you may not have. Moving out? Okay, so that was a really funny way to kind of introduce you guys to the topic. You want to take it, Mister?
No, it's your show. I'll chime in.
Wait,
Go
I
ahead.
want you to explain the concept, though. Will you do that, please?
You want me to explain the concept?
Yes.
So following the heels of the skit, in our society as Black folks, there's a way in which that we fight each other as only whether it's in the workplace or whether it's just in society in general. We want to be that magical Negro in white folks' eyes, right? And so that's something that happens that we do. But also, too, there's a situation that's placed upon us when white folks deem that there can only be one type of magical Negro or just one type of Negro, right? And so within the identity politics, um, that's often the case. So if you are a Black person within the LGBT community, then you're going to be that magical Negro because you check off multiple boxes, you know, as far as being hired, right? So that you have the pardon the pun, the diversity rainbow, because you're Black, you're queer, you're all these other things, right? That we check off these boxes and it pits you directly against someone who is Black who's not part of those communities, right? And so what it does oftentimes is kind of like that skit alluded to. It pits us at each other where there can only be one type or one magical Negro, and there's no nuance, So Black folks will just be monolithic, right? And if you don't fall within this ideological kind of category, then you're deemed as pathological. And so that's what kind of sparked the conversation that we wanted to have here with you all today.
What would you say the magical Negro looks like?
Currently,
Yeah, currently.
well, I think I kind of hit on that. I think the magical Negro now, if we're talking about Black people, I think the magical Negro is going to be, whether it's male or female, it's going to be somebody that was with, they're in the LGBT community, because again, they get to check off so many boxes. There's somebody that really speaks or challenge or opposes, you know, heterosexuality, especially heterosexuality when it comes to Black males. I mean, that has to be viewed as toxic, has to be viewed as pathological, all these tropes that are associated with it. And then, I think the reason why our heterosexual sisters don't get raked over the coals as badly is because they're kind of grouped in, this kind of intersectionality framework because they're female and Black. so they're still part of, they're not part of the what's called the black male privilege, which is just the most, I mean, ridiculous thing that I've ever heard. But it's such a trope that's out there. So again, answering your question, I think anyone um, currently that doesn't fit within the identity politics of the LGBTQ, especially black males, um, are viewed as not part of that magical Negro. But anybody that is within that framework, um, you know, trans, LGBT, whatever, a black person, they're going to be considered that magical Negro, especially if they're talking negatively about black males, heterosexual black males.
Yeah, I think that the magical Negro these days leans toward the feminine. So the more feminine the Negro, the better. And an effeminate black man is considered to be the closest to the feminine that you can get as far as white people believe, if that makes sense. So, for example, like Mr. was saying, um, women are kind of excluded from this because we're already considered the weaker sex in blackness, right? So oftentimes we hear, especially in these virtual spaces, black men saying that black women are given preference over black men. And that is often true because if you have to pick between a masculine black man or a black woman and you are white, who will you pick, right? The less threatening person, the more controllable person in your eyes, the less offensive person in your eyes is going to be the black woman. Now, black women are even being trumped by something that they like even more, which is a black man that has been stripped of his masculinity. So I would argue it's not just being gay that gets them ahead. I would say those that are very, very effeminate and gay. Like the more effeminate you are, the happier they are to see you. The more magic you exude to them, and the more you can take the place of a traditional black person, because it plays into this narrative, I think, of the controllable black. And ultimately that is the archetype of blackness that has always been pushed. If we look at, books, like, you guys know I like to pick on Uncle Tom's Cabin. When we look at Uncle Tom and her ideal version of a Negro, it was a controllable Negro, a friendly Negro. If we look at Sambo, it was a Negro that had the mindset of a white person. And I think I would argue, me personally, I would argue this because y'all know I go hardcore when it comes to the LGBTQAI plus community. But I would argue that because homosexuality is intrinsically a European phenomenon, that the closest that you can get to their ideal is where they're pushing society, which is to be homosexual, which means that you're in tune with the narrative of what the dominant culture is currently pushing. And I think we're seeing black men first, right? Heterosexual, masculine black men first being pushed to the side, and then black women after them. But I think this also brings into another narrative too, right? Because there used to be another type of preferred black man. And that's something that Mr. and I discussed, and this went up on my Patreon, about the teddy bear effect, which was babe, can you just explain like the traits of the masculinity of the teddy bear effect? Because I want to try to draw a line from what the ideal black was at one point and like where it's moved now and how it's moved even more non-threatening than it was before.
Yeah, definitely. So when we're talking about the teddy bear effect, we're talking about those black men in leadership, CEOs, Fortune 500, industries, things of that nature, right? And even more so, not just in big companies like that, but just in leadership, even if it's in education. What the teddy bear effect argues, and I think it's true because I've experienced it, is that there has to be this docile nature associated with the black male, that he has to be constantly skinning and grinning and smiling and overly jovial, right? He can't be, agentic, have the agency and be stern and domineering, because that goes, all the tropes are associated with black males, that he's the big angry black male and the black rapist and everything. So if he is aggressive in any manner, that is something that he has to fight against, because viewed in the eyes of society, and especially how they view black males in those leadership roles, is that they have to be somewhat docile and kind of laid back, you know, or like I said, the teddy bear, warm and fuzzy, that type of individual. I mean, and like I said, I know about that firsthand when I was an administrator in California. And yeah, my director used to see me like, why aren't you smiling? Just like asking me questions like that, and just, you don't seem happy, and just crazy stuff. Like, I'm dealing with multiple things going through, and I'm just have a look of like being in thought. But it's like you constantly have to be doing a damn jig. You know what I mean? Like, yes, sir, boss. Am I showing enough teeth now? I mean, that's really how black males have to conform themselves within, working spaces. And I would say it goes beyond just in leadership roles. I mean, they look at you all the time, and you have to wear the mask that grins and lies, and it's very tiring, and it causes a lot of racial battle fatigue. But going back to the teddy bear effect, I mean, it's funny, the direct opposite of that. When you're talking about white males, they are viewed as being agentic, having that agency, having that domineering, being in control, and, being able to pound the desk and everything. That's part and parcel of them being able to get those positions, because it's viewed the direct opposite. Oh, they're the take control type of person. They know how to do this and that, and navigate and delegate and be stern. Black males they're not afforded that same opportunity and or experiences. So I think Irene is right. It's a direct correlation to that in the emasculated brother, the feminine brother, right? And I mean, it's just the correlation, right? And maybe some could argue it's a causality, but I just hate it because it causes this bifurcation between black folks. And I think sometimes we are part of that bifurcation, right? I think especially, some of our brothers within the LGBT, you know, BQ, whatever, XYZ community, I think they're causing, or I wouldn't say causing, but I don't think they're doing anything to lessen this bifurcation, between brothers and sisters who are heterosexual, and between those that are not. And again, I'm not making that statement with a broad brush, because there are some brothers and sisters within that community who are not part of this bifurcation. I know several, but especially when you're talking about the academy and those who are doing research, and even in popular culture, right? There's this notion to, like, shame those who are not part of that community, who are not, I would say, necessarily accepting of it. I mean, that's not their thing. So they're not bashing anybody, but they're just, their choice is heterosexual. I mean, to be heterosexual. That's not, that shouldn't be shamed, you know? And it is this eerie irony to me, because almost like, what some of them have gone through, because not all of them have gone through this type of discrimination. So I'm not saying discrimination is good at all, but when you have this fake notion of this oppression Olympics, you know, and it's really odd to me where you know people of that community haven't been taken from a continent, you know what I mean, and made into chattel slaves and everything. So the whole comparison is just ludicrous to me. I don't even, dignify that with a response, because how could you make that same comparison? But I think what's that Budishig or whatever his name is made that comparison a couple weeks ago, and I'm just like, people ate his ass up. But anyway, he may have liked that. But back to the point of the teddy bear effect. But I think there is definitely, a correlation and even maybe a causality to that, the ways in which brothers are kind of forced to act, in that situation. And if you don't conform to that kind of, that that kind of notion, that kind of, if you're not conformed to that at all, things are going to be difficult for you. You know what I mean? If you're, a true alpha male in every sense of the word, and you're not, you're being unapologetic to who you are, and you're not always skinning and grinning and showing your teeth and everything, and just making, you know, white people feel super comfortable around you, there's going to be some pushback.
Especially white women, I think.
Oh, especially.
Because, and I think that is the danger in exuding black male dominance, and just masculinity in corporate spaces and educational spaces, especially when you go white collar. You come in contact more with white women as you are working. And, part of, and I don't know if you guys caught that, of the teddy bear effect is that there was a physical appearance that white people preferred. And so you find that highly successful black men meet that physical appearance. So they tend to have fatter cheeks. They tend to have softer features.
No facial hairs. They're always
Yeah.
clean cut.
Yeah, they have a more clean cut look. They're not sporting like beards, things like that. Anything to bring down the intimidating, quote unquote, right?
No dreadlocks.
Right, factor of black masculinity. And so that kind of ties into what Mr. was just saying. Now we take it to the next level where you're already in an environment where you have to scale back, right? If you want to make it, right? If you want to be present in these spaces as a black man, you've already got to scale back on your innate masculinity, because when you are coming into contact with white people, but specifically white women, right? Specifically white women, if you do anything that comes across manly, they will take it as a threat. And can you talk a little bit about that, like the danger in just exuding masculinity and why, and how that might tie into why the preference now is for homosexual black men over straight black men, and even over women, which used to be preferred over black men?
Yeah, you know what? It's a weird irony. You know what I mean? Because historically, white women and white men have always fetishized after black men, right? And so those things still are happening today. Of course, we're still we're not naive to that fact, and so it's a weird dynamic because white women still do look at black men that way, even if the black man is not heterosexual. And so it's kind of like this weird dynamic is that, because it's a lot of times it's very much overtly sexualized. I mean, it's not overt, but it's very covert. You know what I mean? And it's like, yes, I know I may have these, sexual desires for you and everything, but I'm going to use my power and privilege and everything to emasculate you. It's like some type of weird kinky stuff that they get out of it. You know what I mean? I mean, it's really, I mean, historically, we could trace it back to enslavement where, you know, these white women were raping these black men, forcing them to, penetrate them and everything and saying, if you didn't, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say these things. And now it's not exactly to that magnitude, but again, it's undergirded in that type of, historicism, right? Those things that actually happen when you look at the current, today. And so they can say certain things. Their word is already going to outlast yours. I mean, I know a colleague, this is crazy. um, that had a box thrown at him by a white woman. And I was just like, how in the hell does that happen? And there's no repercussions. You know, I have a student with dreads, and this white woman just went and put her hand through his head, just like, just feeling all in the scalp. Like, really? And there's no repercussions. We're still trying to see what the hell is going to happen to her. But again, if you have an organic visceral response, you're going to prison. You know what I mean? You're leaving in handcuffs. Because there's just no way you could do anything to our precious white women because they're perfect. It's like they're Norman Bates. They would never hurt a fly. You know what I mean? It's just so virtuous.
Now imagine if the white woman who threw that box at that black man, what if he would have picked that box up and thrown it back at her? They would have taken him away in handcuffs.
Absolutely.
But she's literally able to be abusive. And remember, this is a white collar setting, capable of being abusive, as in picking up an object and throwing it at a black person. And that is okay. Or even in the case of the student, you have a black male with dreadlocks and a white woman puts her hand in his hair. That's assault. What if he smacked her hand away? That child would have been the person,
absolutely,
or young man, you know what I mean, would be the person to be the one in trouble, despite the fact that he was literally assaulted. Whether it was a violent assault or not, it was still assault. She should not be putting her hands on him.
No, she went like all the way up in it and kind of was like shaking it. So she just didn't like touch a dread or two. She went all the way up in there, just like as he described it to me. And I was like, if this was the inverse, he would have been gone right now. And so these are the things that we have to navigate on a daily basis. Now, I want to kind of pivot right now, with all this in mind, and kind of like going back to what is kind of undergirding this conversation and the scene that opened up in our conversation with the one Magical Negro. So now with this bifurcation in place, when you have a brother who's working there and he already has to deal with, the dynamic of, the white women, we know the dynamic of the white man is always, there. But I think historically we never, and even currently, we've never really looked at the dynamic of the white woman.
No, that's because they're too busy trying to have sex with them.
Well,
they take the time to look at the actual danger that comes with white femininity.
Well, I think it goes both ways. So I think sometimes, like I said, alluded to earlier, sometimes they were forced upon, and people don't really understand about, force to penetrate and everything. And sometimes, again, keeping it a buck, some men probably were looking at it and say, okay, I'm gonna smash this white woman and everything. But again, I'm not covering. I'm not saying that with a blanket, statement. Everything. There were sometimes there were probably was some coercion, and there were sometimes like, okay, well, I just could get down with the get down. And so again, I think it's some nuance.
Mr. Also, black women. I don't want it to sound like I'm just picking on black men. Black women are guilty too, because we often view white women as allies because we are all women.
Come on now, say that.
We treat them as if we are allies because we all have vaginas, when in reality, it actually puts us in a position where we are enabling and aligning ourselves with a group of people that are highly dangerous and toxic to our men.
Absolutely. It's funny that you say that. I'm going a little sidebar. I was listening to Elaine Brown, who was a prominent sister in the Black Panthers, and she still does a lot. But she's not part of the new Black Panther, but historically, her work in the movement is just been tremendous. And so she was being interviewed by this white woman, and they were talking about the breakfast programs that they had in the school, and she was talking about the logistics of that. And the lady was like, so who did the cooking and everything? She said, was it primarily the women? And and Sister Brown went in on her like, why would you say something like that? She said, let me just address this right here. there's a trope associated with, the Panthers and the power movement, that the women were just docile, and that these men were just misogynist and everything, and the women were supposed to be in their position and just cooking. She said, as a matter of fact, the head chef was a brother, a black man, and everything. So, and she just went in on her. She's like, you all get this rhetoric, following up what you're saying, from these white feminists, these bourgeois feminists. You know, um, I forget her name right now. Not the Margaret Sanger, but she was one. But the other white feminist escapes me right now, that worked with the FBI, CIA. It may have been Sanger, but I think it was another one. I think it was Sanger. But anyway, she just went in like, no, that's why would you come at me like that? She said, let me just clear the record right now. But again, that's that association that you're right, that a lot of our sisters have, with this with these feminists, these white feminists, and I call them, all lies, because they really don't have our best interests. And again, there's a huge distinction between this feminism and Africana womanism, which really is, and when you look at Africana womanism, it aligns the black man and the black woman and everything. It says, yes, we have our nuances, but we're not going to be separated on this feminist stuff and everything, because we're going to support each other and support our race. That's a totally different conversation that feminists has. It pits, black men against black women and everything. And
Zero said he thinks you're thinking of Gloria Steinem.
Yes, that's exactly who I'm thinking about.
Thank you, Zero.
Yes. Sometimes those white women get, kind of look the same, and I run them together. But yes, definitely Gloria Steinem. She was part of that movement. And I mean, even you have people like the Rockefellers that were part of that movement that hired her specifically to cause a bifurcation between the black community, the males and the females. But going back to my point, I was going to say about how black men in these spaces, heterosexual black men, of course, always had to deal with the dynamic of white men and the structural racism, and white women and the raping and the sex and everything. And I will even say this for sometimes heterosexual and homosexual black males, they had to deal with that within white males. You know what I mean? Because white males fetishize the black male bodies too. I mean, so that we know these type of incidents exist. I mean, we could look at what happened to Terry Crews, right? I mean, his assault, person grabbing his, genitals and making.
You know what? Honestly, it's so hard for me to feel bad for that man, because if he should have bashed that man's head in, as big.
But
as strong as that man is,
that's the popular rhetoric, right? And
I can't help it. He's huge.
But here's the thing. It goes back to what we were just saying. Just think about what your statement we just said. We have to navigate so much. So I'm not saying, hey, if somebody grabbed my stuff and everything, I'm not saying there's not going to be a reaction. But again, you're right. He's a big black man. So what happens if he, tears his ass up, not the way he wants it?
Yeah, he'll end up in prison.
He's going to be labeled. He's going to be viewed.
He's going to be in prison.
You know what I mean? And then
beating up a rich white man.
Well, but that's the end of his career. You know what I mean? Because it's the same thing doesn't apply to Terry Crews as it does to a white man. I mean, look at Weinstein. I mean, he has so many allegations and everything hurled at him, associated with him. He just gives a couple of beepers around his ankles and everything and pays out a lot of money. He's never seen any time in prison.
Or that guy, Ed Buck. Do you guys remember him, Ed Buck from Hollywood, that kept having black gay men show up in his house, but never saw a jail cell? Like, he just kept calling the police and the ambulance to pick up these dead black guys.
See, that's what I'm saying. So people say that about, Terry Crews, just because he's big and buff, he just should have whooped the guy's butt.
He should have,
but he's going to. I mean, again, the black man listening to this, again, we may feel like, he just should have beat him up, but we know there's going to be the ramifications for our actions are going to be far greater. I mean, so Terry Crews put himself in a position to become this really good, comedic actor, right? And again, we hear the swirls around, things you have to do in Hollywood and everything. I mean, I don't know if that's true or not, but I mean, it stands to reason, right? But outside of that, if he would have done something, again, even though that guy's in the wrong, right, for assaulting him, again, nothing happens. And I really like what my brother Dr. Tommy Curry says about this because, when you look at the Me Too movement, if you're really looking at a Me Too movement, right, you're looking at the act of people being sexually violated, regardless of identity politics. So when this happened to Terry Crews, the Me Too movement didn't take him on until he started talking about toxic masculinity, started talking about how his dad, beat up his mom and all this other stuff. I mean, he really had to be, apologetic for basically being a big black guy. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I'm going off in the soapbox, but
meanwhile, y'all, can I just brag on the fact that my man's circle of friends and his intellectual superiors are people like Dr. Tommy Curry, which I really appreciate. That's why I love like learning at the feet of Mr. But Daryl said something, babe, which I think is pretty interesting. He said, I believe every Black person turns into a child mentally around white people. Do you think that we have a digression in like mental age and reaction when we get around white people? Specifically, because I think white people in the hood may not do this to us, right? But definitely white people where we feel there could be a power dynamic there that we view as authority figures. Do you think that that's true?
I think some of us do that. Um, I think some of us, those of us are especially trying to, by any means necessary, ascend to, a level we're trying to ascend to. And so again, that's what I mean by wearing the mask that grins and lies, right? Um, and I think they will kind of, not be genuinely who they are. Um, and it kind of goes back to that teddy bear effect, just, kind of being mushy around white folks and everything because we want to make them feel comfortable. We don't want white folks to feel uncomfortable by the things we do, the ways in which we do them, and or what we say. So there may come a time where there's this kind of childlike or this kind of dumbing down just to, make sure they feel okay with us. Because if white folks feel that there's a threat of any sort, then they're going to thwart, they're going to get rid of you.
That's going to be like, you're not going to get that job. You're not
you're not going to get that promotion. You're not going to get that raise. And you may not understand, you may not make tenure. I mean, you may not get that article published or anything. I mean, so they have a lot of power, right? And when I mean by power, I mean like hegemony. I mean, like soft power. I mean, so we know they have the power to actually kill us, with the policies, police, and all these type of things. But I mean, like they have the powers to make sure we don't get certain things that we've actually, our merit warrants us to get, right? And so they could do certain things like that.
I think that, like, with regard to what Daryl is saying, I feel like some people wear a mask around white people, but I do feel like some people genuinely believe on a subconscious level that white people literally are their mental and societal superiors. So they fall into the place literally of, like when you meet somebody that you admire or that you feel is all powerful, like you just don't even. I have literally watched Black people who act like they don't know how to act at any place, but let them get into a serious situation with white people, all of a sudden they're no longer ghetto. You find out they know words that they I'm thinking of one person in particular. I'm like, you're always talking about never changing yourself. But when it comes to these white people, when you have to go to that social security office for your check, when you have to, you know what I mean? When you have to go to court, when you have to, deal with the police, when you have to do all these things, when you have to go to your job and deal with your supervisor, all of a sudden you fall directly into place. Now, I'm going to be real careful because Mister's here, but I'm going to say that, this conversation, that makes me think of why we need socio-political revolution. Because how is anybody comfortable walking around in a world where that whether you are sliding into that mindset because you just don't know any better, or whether you are taking yourself down a few notches because it is a protective mechanism, but that is, a regular, like we do it so regularly and we've had to do it so constantly every time we encounter whiteness that we don't even think about it anymore. It's literally like second nature. It's something we don't question. It's something I honestly feel like most people don't feel outraged about it on the regular, which I think is what you were going into. Like, could that be a symptom of racial battle fatigue where you just are like, oh, just
Yeah,
go with
I
the
think
flow of it?
yeah, I think it's a combination of Joy DeGruy's work on the post slave um, disorder, the syndrome. I think it's a combination of that because it becomes a socialization mechanism, like you said. Um, it's the ways in which people have to navigate, and it happens with automaticity. Um, but when we talk about racial battle fatigue, it's like, the microaggressions and how these things start to weigh on you. So let me give you an example. When I referenced a student that was assaulted, like you said, by this white woman, he was fatigued. I mean, first of all, I wasn't there on campus, but he called me, because we have a relationship like that. He called me and he was like, he was going, I'm like, listen, I'm on my way back. I had to pick up some stuff because we were having an event on campus the next day. And I was like, and I spoke to my predecessor and I'm like, okay. And he said, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. I was like, okay. And I had to follow up on my student because I'm like, listen, when you go through these racial battle fatigues and everything, we often do some maladaptive things, right? We may smoke, we may drink, we may indulge in some behaviors that we shouldn't be indulging in. You know what I mean? And so these are the types of things, how it weighs on us. And I saw him the next day and we had an event and he still wasn't right. You know what I mean? He still wasn't his jovial self, you know, and I followed up with him, over the weekend. I saw him on Monday. He's like, man, I'm messed up. He came to my office and we talked. I was like, I see you a little bit better. He was like, yeah, but I'm not, you know. And so it takes its toll. It takes
Yeah.
this physiological toll
And
on you.
for
And
those of you, I'm sorry, go ahead, baby.
no, so it takes its toll on you and it makes you so it's easy for you to snap on somebody. So I'll give you the example. So I know a lot of people, especially on YouTube, they're really not big fans of brother Doctor. What's his name right now? Had the school and
With the
everything. I can't think of
non-existent school,
what's his name.
non-existent school,
So
man.
anyway, so uh,
Donate to Q Better, y'all. No,
shout out to Q Butter, but what's my brother's name? I can't think of his name right now.
I,
Doctor.
the man with no school, y'all. Dr. Umar
Yeah,
Johnson.
Dr. Johnson. So Dr. Umar Johnson, brother Dr. Umar Johnson said this on the first Hidden Colors, which again, a lot of people don't put this in perspective. So again, you're dealing with racial battle fatigue, especially as a black male, right? You're dealing with racial battle fatigue. You're in a society where you're trying to get a job. You do everything society tells you to do. Get an education, get a job, and people talk to you, see your voice, see you, and then you come in, everything seems promising, and you don't get the job, and this happens, chronically, time after time after time after time, right? you have a partner, your wife or everything, you may have kids and everything, and you got to provide, right? Because, black women are having that, especially when black women are able to attain those jobs and everything. And they're looking at you like, Negro, what's wrong with you? But some of the sisters know that it's a lot more difficult. But again, be that as it may, those situations just compound and compound and compound. And again, if you're not doing anything, adaptive to deal with that type of stress, it will blow up. And here's what I mean by that. And so Dr. Umar mentioned this in the first Hidden Color. He said, when we see a brother just, bump into somebody else, in the store or something like that, and they just go off or everything, pull out a gun or start beating up on another brother or something like that, it turns into this huge confrontation. We just say, what in the heck is wrong with him? Why did he just go off on that? It just nudge you in the shoulder and stuff like that. But it's the accumulation of that. And notice we do that to each other. We don't often take off on the white person that's really, or white people that's causing this strain and strife. We do it to each other. And again, this is part of that racial battle fatigue, where we just take off and everything. And the reason why I said that, because at the event that we had after, my brother was accosted, the student was accosted like this, assaulted, we had this event and everything, and another brother came up to him and was like, like pat him on the shoulder. And he was like, brother, please, this is not the day. You could see that he was visibly angry and was about to take off with his other brother for doing something that he always does. You know what I mean? But he was so angry and so upset and out of sorts that I saw him. I was like, so I was able to intervene. But these are the things people don't put in perspective. Right?
I wanted to put this in perspective, this conversation. So some of you may not know, but Mr. What he does is he works in a predominantly white area, like state, where he does programs with youth that are Black from not elementary school, so just middle school, college, and high school. Are those? Yes.
Yeah, and we're starting to do some with elementary now, but yeah, well, I am.
Yeah.
I just love the babies, but yeah.
So he actually sees this firsthand every day, because in his programs and activities and in his space, and he also teaches, right?
Yeah.
Classes on Black studies and things like that, but specifically like with his work with children, he deals with this on a regular basis, encountering children that are growing up in what is a hostile environment. And so when he says that that young man was really worn down, the hand in his hair and just being violated by a white woman and not being able to get any sort of recourse for that was probably the icing on the cake of already existing in an environment where you could literally go out into the town and just never see another Black person. Where the encounters that you have in programs like the ones that Mr. is over are the only time where you'll get into a space and that many Black people are going to be there together and interacting. Because back to the Magical Negro thing, in these sorts of environments, Black people act like they don't see each other on the street.
Man.
Like, how we always recognize each other, y'all?
Yeah.
When we see a Black person and we acknowledge their Blackness, we can't even help it. We just do it. We don't even know why we're doing it. It's just somewhere we pick this up unifiedly, right? They don't do that there. They do not This is a place, y'all, you can't imagine.
They look right through you. It's really like a Get Out movie. I mean, you almost have to flash them with your camera because they're like, I mean, it's just. But again,
you've seen me over here.
It's part of their socialization. It's part of their socialization. So, I mean, having been able, so having the being afforded the abilities to go to these schools and work with school districts and county schools. And seeing, the strife that these babies have to go through, right, on a continuum, right? I mean, the N word being thrown out and nothing's being done, and teachers, I mean, literally like assaulting teachers, like bumping them, going down the hallways and everything. I mean, this is like what they have to contend with on a daily basis. And I'm like advocating. I'm like, okay, what in the hell are we going to do about this? I mean, I'm talking to people at the district level, like, so county, above all the school districts. I'm like, so what are you doing? What conversations are you having with your school? I mean, your superintendents, what policies are being placed to make sure these babies are safe? And so when you get, kind of like this holistic picture of what they have endured, their socialization process through elementary, middle, and high school, and when they become young adults, you see why they don't want to be around other Black folks, because this is the treatment that they get. So they kind of disown their Blackness. It's kind of like, Master looking, I can't see, I can't be seen talking to you. That's why they look right through it. I'm like,
Oh
it's
no,
the coping of their
they
mechanism.
look right through you and let them
Yeah,
accidentally see you. Like I was in a store and a Black man accidentally recognized that I was there and he looked away like he had done something wrong.
absolutely.
I was
Yeah,
like, I didn't even have time to acknowledge your existence because my first instinct was shock because I was like, oh damn, a Black person. Like where'd you come from? I thought I was the only one. And then before I could acknowledge I was happy just to see a Black face,
it was gone.
he literally turned away like we can't even be in the same store together.
No, not a safe space. No,
I was like, aren't you relieved to see me, Black man? Like,
no, He was like, they watching. He was like, they watching us. They gonna come and get us. Don't you hear the dogs? So I mean, I'm making fun of it, but it's really not funny
it's
because
not funny. No, it's
because
sad.
that's really how they've been socialized, and that's way they have to, that's their survival tactic. You know what I mean? It's just to be kind of indifferent of other Black people. I was coming from an event yesterday, and I was talking to a former student, and we were walking, and we saw this young brother, and he was with a sister. He was a little brown sister. I'm like, okay. And so he said, hey, what's going on, brother? I'm like, okay, what's going on? He wasn't from here. You could always tell when
He,
people are not
he
from here.
didn't know y'all weren't supposed to talk.
I mean, I can always tell when people that are not from here, they engage and they're like, hey, what's up? They give you the head nod, something like that. But you could head nod one of these Negroes out here, they will not like. I mean, it's really like Get Out. I mean, like you have to flash them and their nose might start bleeding.
You
But
gotta force them to talk to you, grab their face. I know you see me. We
but
are
yeah,
going
I
to
mean, but
interact.
they'll leave so quickly. I mean, you won't be even able to grab their face. I mean, because they're gone. I mean, that literally happened. I mean, the same thing happened to you, happened to me in the store. It was an OG. It was an older brother. I'm like, oh, okay. He kind of looked at me like, literally like Get Out. Like the dude made that like quick turn and everything. Like he ran. I mean, he almost did something like that. He like grabbed his stuff and just made a left. I'm like, okay, this is happening in real life in the world right
Yes.
now.
I've never experienced anything, Mr. And we've never experienced anything like that. Crazy. But again, there's a trauma that comes with that. And
Absolutely.
so his work is with the Black children that are present because they are growing up in trauma, which is why I did that. You guys remember maybe a month or so ago, I did that video about should Black people, leave white spaces, like
Yeah.
environments like that. And I was so strong about, yes, they need to get out. Mr.
I
doesn't
oppose
agree
it,
with me on.
of course,
Mr.
because I love
He
space.
feels like somebody has to be there for them. I think you were with me for that conversation.
Yeah,
Weren't you?
yeah, that was one
Yeah.
that
So
we.
Mr. and I actually visited this, and it was inspired by witnessing that environment, and that made me feel so strongly like our children do not belong there. Like it's traumatic to grow up like that. But Mr., I want to ask you, like, the magical Negro thing, right? Do you think that this has any, because a lot of times we hear about Black people reaching certain heights in business and them not pulling other Black people up with them. Do you think that has something to do with the magical Negro phenomenon? Like this recognition that like you don't want too many Black people in the space. You don't want to look like you're giving preference to Black people, so that there literally can only be one. Like if another Black person gets there, it can't be you, the Black person that brought them on. Do you think that that's like an aspect of it?
So, but my answer is kind of in a circuitous way. So, the point that I was going to make that I never got a chance to, I think it kind of dovetails into this question that you're asking. So, when you have a brother there, take me, right? In a space, a job space, right? And you know, clearly I'm heterosexual. I'm unapologetic. I'm political. I know how to play the game, but you know that I'm Black. Okay, you come in my office, you're gonna see nothing but Black folks on the wall, red, black, and green, and everything. Black authors and everything. So, and in my position specifically works with Black students, and so you know what you're getting, right? And who I tend to network with and everything else, who I lean on are the Black folks that have been working there for years and everything. And I pull on them and everything and listen to them for guidance and resource and wisdom, right? So when you have somebody like me, right? And then let's say you have somebody who, another brother who may be there, but they're, like you said, to use your terminology, a little bit more effeminate, a little bit more cheesy in front of white folks and everything, just, pretty much placating white folks and saying, what you think saying what you think they want to hear, right? And then, pretty much being the early kind of Dr. King, the kind of integrationist logic and like, you know, you know, Black women and all this stuff, holding hands and kumbaya. When you have those type of Negroes, I think they come in place to serve as a foil to you, because now we look at it analogous to the Malcolm, Martin kind of foil dynamic, right? Because Martin was viewed, Dr. King was viewed as the integrationist good Negro, and of course, Malcolm X was seen as the revolutionary that. And so what they often do is that they'll pit, you know, and these that other Negro plays into that because they have aspirations of becoming whatever. Now somebody
The last standing magical Negro.
absolutely they want to be the last, and they'll do whatever. When I say whatever, they'll do whatever it takes for them to attain that. Me, on the other hand, I always tell my students and people in the community, I say this about we, not me. So I'm always looking at ways to give my students, other brothers and sisters, opportunities to do talks or presentations and everything. So they won't just holler at me and say, hey, you know, Dr. Mister, we need you to do this. I'm like, oh, well, I have a student that could do that. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to build a huge cadre of, young up and coming or people that have the acumen that could do things that I could do, or there may be a little bit of work in progress, but they need that exposure, right? So I'm trying to mentor and help develop and create that conduit. So it's just not about me, it's about we. Again, that's antithetical to what these foil magical Negroes are about, because they don't care about the Black community. They don't care about the babies. They just care about their ascending, them getting, a dean or president or whatever it is that they're trying to get. They'll do whatever it takes to get that. And for me, I'm not cut from that cloth. So to answer your question, there is this kind of division that's very much intentional. And I always tell people, I'm like, listen, we got to be smarter than this. And so if we know this is what they're doing, because sometimes we just have different personalities and we could be going the same way. that's not always the case where you're looking at a magical Negro that's trying to do whatever, he or she has to do to make it there. But sometimes we have different ideologies, right? And that those things happen, but we still are for our people. And when that's the case, I say, hey, listen, they're going to choose one of us over the other. And I'm saying, let's play the game. Let's play the foil. And what I mean by foil is a literature term that where you have one particular character in a place is to use to shine the light on the other character, right? And so one of the characters may be, fat and grumpy and everything. The other characters in shape and everything. So when you see that one, this other character shines more. So that's what I mean by the term foil. So I said, hey, let's use this to our advantage. If we know they're going to cause this division between us, let's make sure we appear to be a foil, but we're actually working together. So we actually want you to get up there, sitting there, but you're still being, you're still analogous to the spook who sat by the door, i.e., meaning that you're getting in there, getting the intel and everything, but you're going to make sure that everybody else is coming in there too, or you're trying to get there to destroy it. You know what I mean? Or to thwart that system, one or the other. But again, a lot of Negroes are cut from that cloth. They just think about themselves. And so when I'm in that situation, I'm like, listen, I could be the sacrificial lamb. You know what I mean? I could be, I could die on the cross and everything because
You know what, though, Mister, I have to be honest. I feel like the majority of the time, y'all, I'm just more often than not, when Black people reach a certain level of affluence or success, they start to get a very isolationist attitude. And I feel like that is really problematic because then they feel like they're not part of the collective, that the collective is beneath them. And honestly, I've definitely had this hurled at me. I'm sure you've had it hurled at you. Anybody who has ever reached a level of education or affluence or success will be othered. But
here's the thing. Here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let me interject. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with that at all. And here's where I think and know that the community has to have some type of inoculation, some type of understanding of, listen, this is a person that's ascending. We still need to protect them too. And it should be a bi-directional, relationship. You know what I mean? So understanding and understanding that, hey, they're going to put barriers between them and we. So what are we going to do to make sure that there's still a connection? Because sometimes, even though that person is ascending, sometimes we are descending. We're getting further away from them too. So it goes both ways. And oftentimes we don't look at it that way. We just look at it like, oh, this Negro think they too good now because they're here. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe, but you still my brother and sister and everything. How can we get down? And that envy is a thing that really separates us, and not a thing of like where how can I still be here and I'm protecting everything, but I'm still helping our people and everything. And I don't think they have to be always, the metric, I mean, just a zero sum game, right? Where they have to be, antithetical, just direct opposites. I think if we work shrewd enough, we could have the person ascend and everything, and there still could be some connectivity to our people. I mean, other people do it all the time. It just seems like within our community, because it's the only community I'm part of, where there has to be this type of sellout notion, or there has to be this bifurcation or disconnect from, the masses.
Yeah.
And I think we need to do a better job on that on both sides. I think the person who's ascending, and I think the people in the community who sees that and have been part of that still need to make sure that they're working hand in glove.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. And I think that's something that's not touched on a lot. We often talk about how people reach a level of success and abandon the collective, but we don't talk about how this thing goes both ways. That as people gain education and success, that they are sometimes pushed away from the community too. because there's some sort of unspoken belief that there's going to be a divide there, so that we both need to be reaching toward each other. And like, Mr. said, he's always telling the little ones that it is not me, it is we. And I think we just have to keep that in our minds.
No, it's definitely about we. But this, I want to be clear to the listening audience. This doesn't exonerate, especially Negroes in academy or those who are aspiring to, ascend to whichever positionality that they're trying to ascend to. There's some of us that you're right. They just are not trying to be around them. I mean, it's kind of like the analogy we were talking about, here in this space. It's like, no, I don't want to be associated with them, because if I'm associated with them, that's going to make me look bad. So we do have some, Negroes of that ilk, right, who are just, so they want to be the oracle voice of the Black community, everything, but they don't want to have anything to do, with that community. You know what I mean? So they want to talk for them, but they don't want to get their hands dirty. You know what I mean? So they don't want to really get down and talk to the Pookie and Ray Rays. You know what I mean? They don't want to talk to the Shaniquas and people like that. They just want to distance themselves from them. They want to actually, poke fun at them. You know what I mean? But they don't really want to, like I said, roll up their sleeves and say, okay, what's going on?
Well, they want to benefit from being the magical Negro,
Absolutely.
but they don't really want to associate with the
Absolutely.
other Negroes. They're like, we'll
Absolutely.
be up on the magical Negro pedestal, but y'all just keep your distance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's not like they're utilizing their influence, to really help the people that they say that they're, being this oracle voice for. That's not what you're doing. So I tell people like this, I'm not big time or anything like that, but when I start, doing talks and more presentations and travel a little bit more, if that comes to fruition, I said one of the things that I want to do is make sure, like when I go to a city or something like that, part of the contract is that we need to hire like 5 Black youth or 4 Black youth. You know what I mean? So if they're doing the promotion, or if they're doing the lighting, or whatever it is that they're doing, they're getting paid and they're getting something to put on their resume. You know what I mean? Because
Mr. is being modest. I think he's highly accomplished, but he also runs in a circle of people who write a lot of books, who do a lot of lectures. I hear a lot of people on YouTube quoting the people that are his friends. So I think he is highly accomplished. He's just very modest, but I think he wants to just do more and be more visible and help more people.
Well, no, I appreciate that. I mean, but I'm serious, because I know and I organize these individuals to come out and do talk, and a lot of them, like you said, are personal friends of mine, people that I think highly of, and again, I'm not bashing them per se, but I just know, if you're coming to a college or something and you're getting $10,000 or $20,000 and everything, which you should, again, get your money. You definitely earn that. You put in the time, you put in your scholarship and everything. And again, we know how these things work. I mean, you got to get it. You got to strike while iron's hot, right? I mean, because unless you're publishing and putting things out, that's kind of polemic or controversial or going to get people to want you to come out, they're not going to pay you that, that money all the time. But even with that being said, I still want to make sure I'm not just coming there and collecting a check and leaving. You know what I mean? So yes, I do want to collect my check, but I want to make sure I'm not being hypocritical and we're not helping some, the Black youth. Because again, that money could help their family, that could get them books, that could, whatever the case may be, right? And so I really, I'm really going to put that in the contract, whether it's coming, comes from mine, or we include it where you have to, pay them, however that goes. I just want to make sure some of those young brothers and sisters, first, they're getting paid, and two, they're getting the experience, that goes along with that. And so I hope, the listening audience and those individuals that are, doing talks and presentations that are way more, versed and recognized than I am, maybe could kind of, take on that mantra of making sure some of our youth, or not just youth, but just some of our people, are getting the opportunity to, first of all, eat, and then getting that
Yeah.
experience. Because when we go to these talks and everything, and again, it's white folks doing the lights, it's white folks doing that, it's white folks doing the publicity and everything, and I'm like, we have folks that could do that. I know in each city they have people who do that. So why aren't we tapping into those individuals? And
Yeah.
then,
I
and
mean,
so
I agree with you, because especially because he's a lot of times on the tail end of like bringing these people into. He's talking about a dynamic where we know we hear a lot of people that go do debates, they go do lectures, they get invited to universities, they get invited to businesses to speak on, especially now that it's kind of like a pet project of white people to have diversity and to seem like they're not trying to be racist. So you get all of these magical Negroes, right? That
mhm,
are able to go out and spread their knowledge. And in the Black community, a lot of us look up to them. Like I said, I hear people quoting these individuals, right? And things like that. But, Mr. is talking about changing it so that it's bi-directional, like he was saying, where it's not just you're going to get a check, but then there are stipulations on that. I want to ensure that there are Black people that are providing the catering, or that are doing the lighting, or that are doing the videography, or, you know what I'm saying? Or if it's an institution, an educational institution, those monies often come from diversity program monies, and
mhm,
there's a stipend for that. So recognizing that you could take that big pot out of their stipend, but if you can somehow work in your contracts that some of those monies go directly to some student use,
mhm.
then this thing is like a giving in both ways, because it's kind of a double-edged sword once you reach a certain level, because we're all at different levels, right? So me, I'm on YouTube just like running my mouth, and then I sit at Mr's feet, and then he teaches me, right? But when you're talking about people that are in Mr's position and like his colleagues' position, those are the people that are writing the books that we're quoting, right? That are doing the research that we're citing, that are doing all of the lectures and the debates and the talks that we're watching on YouTube. And so then that becomes a different conversation, because then there is a detachment, which is, I think, what Mr. is saying, when they're getting paid, where we want those people to make their money, but we also don't want them to lose the boots on the ground aspect of making that connectivity directly with the Black people in the areas that they're coming in to speak with, so that you're not just disseminating knowledge, right?
Absolutely,
But you're
absolutely,
also doing something tangible.
absolutely. And that's very well captured. So when we did our event, that the young brother was a part of, these students, these BSU students, were actually working. So, I framed the event and everything in the breakout sessions, but they were the ones in front of the students actually delivering, the content and everything, and interacting and engaging them, right? And so that's work. You know what I mean? When you have, 100, over 140 students come out to an event and everything, and granted, a lot of these students, even though they did a tremendous job, but they're not educators. I mean, they're not used to being in front of, you know, 30 and 40 students and everything, and getting them engaged in topics such as interest convergence and microaggressions and things like that. You know what I mean? They're not, even though some of them were in my class and everything, and they have a knowledge of that, but it's different, you know, being front and center and facilitating conversations, you know, and the like. And so, what I said to them, I said, listen, you all did a great job. This was a lot of work. I said, I have W-9s for you all. Because now, mind you, our officers, within the Black Student Unions, they get a stipend. But I said, listen, everybody that was there and they worked and everything, give me a W-9 and everything, and we're going to get y'all a little something. Because what I'm trying to establish, what I said earlier, is when they are working, because Black people, especially when we're talking about mentoring and youth and things like this, always get the guilt trip. Oh, we really need somebody like you doing that, and we always do that stuff for free. And I told them like, no, 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 no. This is where that stops. And so, and what I'm trying to do with this work is continue the conduit, so they now could go out to these local schools and everything and mentor other young brothers and sisters. It's just not about um, Dr. Mister. It's just not about me doing it. It's about them doing it and getting the
Stop
next
saying
generation.
Dr. Mister. That is giving me tingles.
It's just not about me, doing that work and they just see me as the one magical Negro. No, it's about them doing it and preparing the other, the younger brothers sisters to continue that work. So I told them, I said, listen, when you go out to those schools and everything, and they invite you out to the BSU and the principals and everybody like, oh, we're so happy you're here. I said, oh, you want me to continue coming here? Here's my W-9. Let's establish a contract. Let's get some going. Because again, that's going to stop that. Them taking advantage of you because they pay everybody. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What you do is important. So I'm trying to instill in them, not just about, just to be money hungry, but not to be taken advantage of too. And see,
But really, though, I really think that everybody thinks Black people are slaves. Even Black people view each other as slaves. But they're always looking for Black people. Are looking for Black people to do some stuff for free. White people are looking at Black people to do some stuff for free. Like, pay us, okay?
Yes.
Stop expecting we're going to do everything for free. Like, people get tight when you want them to pay you for something.
Absolutely.
But this slavery is over. Okay.
Absolutely. Of course, it's slavery by a different name now.
I cannot get Dr. Mister out of my mind. Like, this is screwing up the whole.
This is the work that I'm trying to convey to, the young brothers and sisters and everything. I'm just not trying to have it where it could just be all about me because, Irene is right. In a space like this, I mean, I can really monopolize, just being that magical Negro. But I'm not cut from that cloth where I'm like, no, got other brothers and sisters and everything here. And again, I'm trying to, make sure there's a conduit. There's longevity. If I leave, God forbid something happens and everything, it can continue on. This is how we have things that are systemic. They're sustainable. And so, of course, this work I do, I mean, I won't say it's clandestine. I mean, I don't tell everybody like this is my game plan, but again, the students know, and they appreciate it. The students got me a nice card and everything. I mean, those are the type of things that mean a lot to me. I mean, the awards that I get from, the college, stuff like that, but the awards you get from parents and community members and students and everything, those things mean the most. And that tells you that they appreciate you and what you're trying to do. Like I said, I was talking to a student yesterday and trying to get her when she's trying to get a business established where she events coordinator, because she was within our BSU last year and she did a great job of coordinating events. I said, listen, get your stuff together, write it out, get your W-9 and everything, and so we could get you on board next year. And so my students, they know that's what I'm about. I'm about making sure that it's about we and not me.
Dr. Mister.
Just Mister.
Can we get, I know I like this, where this is going. Can we give our final thoughts so we can have a private conversation?
I can't.
I've been through.
I can't.
I'm in a whole nother headspace with this.
Yes, I see. Yeah, because we've been on here almost an hour, 20 minutes. I'm not looking at it on YouTube, but just any other thoughts that the people have, or I mean, what are your thoughts about kind of like the ways in which I'm going about it? The Magical Negro scenario, I think it's going to be there, but I want to make this abundantly clear. I'm not trying to bash our brothers and sisters within the LGBT community. I'm not trying to.
I am.
He may be, but I am not, because there's just so much.
We love all Black people, no matter what. Whereas I feel more like irritated Jeannie about that life.
She really does.
I really do. They know. Y'all know.
Yeah. I'm just, you know, but what I will say is I just don't like the fact that, again, some in that community, I don't think they're being vigilant enough to kind of decrease its bifurcation. That, again, that they're being a part of, and that is being we're being pitted against each other. And again, this goes back and undergirds the whole conversation of this magical Negro. I think when we look within, career, jobs, education, and everything, the proliferation of the LGBT community is like, that is the identity politics. And if you're not this way, if you don't subscribe to this, then you're going to hell, you're wrong, you're bad, you're xenophobic, you're all these things, right? And within the Black community, we just can't have that. We just can't have that. I mean, to me, it's analogous to feminism. You know what I mean? We're trying to keep this separation between Black men and Black women. And I'm just like, okay, you attempted to do it there, and you were successful to a certain degree, especially within the academy, and I would say even in society. And now I believe this, and again, I'm not taking shots at those within the community. I'm just saying the way that it's structured.
I am.
Really,
I don't want to hear any Black man tell me again that he is my sister. I am against this life. Okay, that's going to be a negative for me. But Mr. Like I said, Mr. Literally, I have to stop him sometime and I'll be like, look, I know you love Black people, but well, we got to draw a line with this one individual Black person, like, because he just loves Black people. Like, y'all can do no wrong in his eyes.
No, I mean, I do love him.
He's got
I do love
excuses for each individual Black person.
But I told you about that one person.
I
told you about that one person. I got to cut them off because, yeah, that.
But what did it take for, like, Mr. Literally, there has to be no other viable option for you other than
no.
before we cut you off. Your skin will have, I mean, literally, we've been out. Okay, this is a petty thing, but as a woman, I will never forget. This was like years ago, maybe like 2.5 years ago.
You gonna bring up the shoe thing?
Yes, we were out shopping, and so he's took me shopping, and he's like, okay, that's enough, nothing else, I'm ready to go. Da 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 da. Then we're walking, and I think he wasn't even wholly Black. He was like a mulatto, but he had some Blackness in him, and he was like, I could clean your shoes up, I could do this and that, and he stopped and paid $40.
Wasn't $40.
Wasn't it $40? You got both shoes done, didn't you? It was $40, y'all.
No,
for this man to
like
clean his shoes that did not need any cleaning. Did you buy the product?
Yes,
I bought it. And he bought the product, y'all. I was like, I thought we were done shopping. But he was like, I got a soft spot in my heart for Black people. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, he loves Black people. He loves Black people. He loves them to pieces. He's one of those people where he loves our people. I don't even want to say to a fault, but he loves our people in a very real sort of way. Like,
I love Black people to life, and that's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Shout out to Q Butter doing this thing with the academy and everything, the institute. So there's nothing wrong with that. My brother, he loves Black folks.
That, like, you know what? I cannot knock it because I know that it is very genuine. And I also know that he makes an impact in the lives of the people that he deals with. So like he says, his students, and some of them are, because, he does actually teach at the university level, but some of them are not directly his students. They're just part of the programs that he runs for Black youth, but they're like all his children. And I think he loves them all equally. And he puts so much into it, doing symposiums for Black mental health and coming out of his pocket for that. And something he's been doing for years, running a mentoring agency for young Black boys. And, that kind of love for our community, I think that kind of realness, like, I definitely respect. Q Butter is another one where he like barely sleeps. because he just loves Black people that much, and like his whole life is surrounded with bettering the community. And I think that spirit we can definitely learn a lot from, versus trying to be the magical Negro, trying to be that one Black person that is excelling, that one Black person that's being seen by white people, that one Black person that gets the promotion, that one Black person that is able to separate themselves from the community and make it, you know, versus trying to be the magical Negro. We need to have like a greater love for our people. And obviously everybody can't do the sacrifices. Like everybody doesn't have that kind of level of selflessness in them, but like we all can pull something out of ourselves, right? You don't have to barely sleep like Cuba, or you don't have to spend all your days in your career reaching out to Black youth and empowering Black youth like Mr. But we all can pull something out of ourselves that helps to detract us from the tendency that we often have to be like Highlander, where there can only be one Negro in the
Absolutely,
situation.
absolutely, and that's and again, you know, the structural regime understands that. You know what I mean? They understand how that's how Negroes operate, right? We could get you a carrot, you could dance for a jig, and we got you. And again, like you said, I really appreciate you saying that we have to be overstanding of those people in those situations too, because again, you know, we have families, we have partners, we have kids, you know, we have stuff to pay, and we know we're working within these systems and everything. But I think when you're very genuine and you know you're very altruistic and you're for the people, um, you know, ultimately God is the best of planners, and I think you'll be all right. But yeah, there's some risk that comes with it. But again, I think you know when you're doing things and you have good intentions, ultimately everything will be all right. You're on mute.
What'd you say?
Oh, I can hear you. I thought you were on mute.
Dr.
Okay.
Mister and I are done talking to y'all because we are gonna have a sidebar. So with that said, thank you guys for coming through.
Yeah, it's
And
been a while. Love
yes, it's
talking
been a
to
while since Mister's been up here. Thank you for coming up, babe. I was like, babe, it's been a while. Will you? And he was willing to, so I picked a good night, y'all, because I was shocked. I thought he's gonna
Yeah.
be in a couple days.
We was gonna talk about Big Girl, but she said they didn't want to talk about her, so I said, okay, that's cool.
Yeah. So yeah, so with that said, y'all, we will talk to you guys later, and yeah, have a nice
All right, peace, y'all.
evening.